Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your host, U.S. Air Force veteran Donna Hoffmeyer, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as we'll bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your host, Donna Hoffmeyer.
Hey everyone, it's Donna, and this week I am so excited, like for a lot of reasons. So I am very blessed that we're in our fourth season of Beyond the Front Line, and this year, I guess everything just got traction, and somewhere we showed up, and all of a sudden we're having all these people reaching out saying, hey, I'd love to come on the show, or there's PR people saying, hey, I think this would be a good fit. And a third category that has been showing up is actually some of these big companies. And so one of the big companies that you guys may have heard of, which is Schneider, which is a national trucking company, reached out and said, hey, we'd love one of our ambassadors to come on, which I thought was great because I've had other companies come on and say, hey, we have an ambassador. And then they talk about this really cool program that they have that a lot of times we don't even know that's going on. So I said, well, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because I found out this really cool program that Schneider company has, and we are going to get all into that. And then we're going to find out at the end how Schneider is going to partner up with us, and how we're going to bring some magic over here in the San Antonio area. So let me start with who we're bringing on. So the ambassador that we're bringing on is a very sweet lady, and I think the world of her, and her name is Patrice Cook, and she is an Army girl. She was a truck driver in the Army, the technical name, a motor transport driver. And if you ask her how long she will tell you, I was in 24 years, 11 months, and 17 days, but who's counting, right? So I'm super excited to welcome Patrice in, because like I said, we're going to have all kinds of conversation on what's going to be going on. But before that, we're going to talk about Schneider, how she got into this, and the program that she's involved in that Schneider is part of. So a lot of cryptic there. There's a lot of cryptic talk, but I want Patrice to talk about it. So Patrice, welcome.
Hi, Miss Donna. Thank you for having me. This is such a great opportunity and honor. Thank you.
It is. It's super awesome. So you were one of the badass girls. You were a truck driver in the military, and for our civilian audience, we make up a very small percentage of the military. I think, what are we at? Like 15%, I think, which is bigger than what we used to be, right? But
yes, ma'am.
If we get into subcultures, right? So I was a nurse, right? So there's all kinds of women in my field, right? But step over to trucking, how many women were in that area?
Not many, honestly. I think the most women that I've ever been, a unit that I've been assigned to, the most women we had was when we got deployed to Iraq. And we still only had 17 females out of a unit of 362.
Yeah. It's a lot of male energy right there. And but you do it with a smile, right? So,
Yes,
tell
ma'am.
me, you were in the Army 24 years, and did you do trucking from the beginning, or how did you weave through that?
Yes, ma'am. When I went into the Army 5 days after I graduated high school, when the recruiters were there, I mean, I live in a little small town in Pennsylvania. If we have 1,000 people, maybe we got 2 red lights, but I knew I wanted to do something more than just, stay here in our town. And when the recruiter came, she was showing videos of different jobs in the military and everything. And, a lot of us had already taken the ASVAB, and I actually scored enough to be an electrician or something. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's going to be for me. So, but when she showed the video of the motor transport operator and the truck drivers, driving all over different states and everything, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. It was like I automatically knew that's what I wanted to do. So I came in as an 88 Mike. I went through Fort Jackson for basic training. Then I went to Fort Leonard Wood for my AIT. And then my first duty station for my first 8 years on active duty, I was in Germany, and I drove a truck, almost kind of the same trucks that I drive now. They were actually Freightliners, They were just the 16 gears instead of the automatics. So I've been driving the big trucks and everything bigger than that, the heads, the Hemmets, all of that good stuff. I did it for my first 18 years in the military. And then when I knew I was coming up on retirement, I wanted to retire from where I started, which was Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And unfortunately, they didn't have any positions for 88 mites there.
Yeah.
So I let the recruiters convince me to become a 74 Delta, which is a chemical specialist. I swear I should have did some research on that because I did not realize I was going back to Fort Leonard Wood for over 4.5 months. But afterwards, I mean, it was a tough transition. But afterwards, I realized that it was such a great um, growth for me because I learned so much more on a different level. And then I was so excited because I won the commandant's list, and I was the honor grad and everything, because I always try
Nice.
to do the best at what I do. And I knew that I had a position secured at Fort Jackson to where I could retire from. So it actually all worked out. But for 18 years of my career, I was a truck driver. Yes.
So I think I find it fascinating how some things just call to people and then like that's that. You know what I mean? Like it's us calling. You would not want me. My grandfather was a truck driver. And I remember being a little kid when I was really little, like sitting in the steering wheel because I was so tiny, I could sit in that, right? But you do not want me driving the truck. I literally can tell you that would be the worst. We have an RV and my husband's like, I got this. So I always find it interesting, like callings, I'm like, I'm a little mesmerized, like, how do you feel so comfortable in such a massive vehicle that, I mean, if you touched a car, you wouldn't even know it, or making the corners or whatever that is. So kudos to you. If you see me in one of those vehicles, you should all make sure that I'm on the right side, not the left side. So yeah, we'll leave that there. So after that, you got out, but you didn't go right into truck driving. I remember when we talked,
Yep.
you kind of skirted around for a little while. And what I want you guys to take away, the audience take away from this is again, soft skills, right? What you went into, which you're going to tell us about, had nothing to do with truck driving or chemicals. So what did you do when you got out?
So when I retired in 2014, a friend of mine, about a buddy of mine, Lisa Phillips, who actually drives for Schneider as well, um, she's like, hey Cookie, I got a job for you if you're interested, because I was trying to figure out what I could do next. And so I ended up going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and working with her at a company called Life Pittsburgh, which is living independently for the elderly. And they wanted to create a transportation department in order to transport all of their participants, which are our elderly community. So we actually created this transportation program from the beginning. I mean, they had nothing. They were renting vans from different companies around the area in Pittsburgh. So we went and helped them pick out the buses, the vans, everything that would accommodate the elderly, whether they were in a wheelchair or walker, if they needed a lift, a bigger van, whatever the case may be. And we built this whole transportation department together, and it was great. And when we got to a point where a couple years later, we're like sitting there one day in the office and we're like, so what do we do now? Everything's running smooth, the buses are running smooth, the dispatching is going good. What do we do? So we're sitting there, we're thinking, and she looks at me and she was like, let's go back to trucking, because she was a truck driver as well. And so I'm like, truck driving. I was like, what? I got to drive a van today, a bus or something? And she's like, no, let's actually go back to truck driving. I said, like the big trucks, I was actually really confused at the moment. But we ended up coming back to truck driving. Both of us did. And that's how we ended up at Schneider in 2017 as 18 drivers. And in 2018, we were awarded the Teen Drivers of the Year, and we were the only female team at the time.
Oh, wow.
There were no other females teams together. Usually it was always a male and a female, but we were the only female team. And we both have expanded throughout Schneider. We've been instructors, we've been training engineers. She actually drives on the bulk side, and I drive for one of our dedicated accounts now, but we're both still at Schneider.
You know what makes me laugh? I think about this too. So, I was a flight nurse, years and years ago. I was in the military, and it's a mix, men, women type thing. Every once in a while, you'd get an all-female crew, front end,
Yeah.
pilots, co-pilot, maintenance, flight nurses, flight techs, the whole enchilada. And, to us, much like I would think for you, you're just going to do your job. You just get in the
Yeah.
truck, you drive, and for the rest of the world, it still blows my mind that we're this far in life and it's still like this thing, right? And so I remember coming out on the flight line and we had to walk through, it's called ECP, like the entry control point, and we have to walk through this specific area. And so there was a pilot and his co-pilot go into their plane and we're going out to ours. And I'm looking at our plane, the C9, and somebody's on the ramp, one of the Jen's refueling, somebody else doing baggage, normal stuff. And these two guys were like, "Do you see that? It's all chicks." And I looked at them like, and like, we're
Yeah.
trained like you are is nothing new, right? So I don't know. I find that people are more enamored than we are. Like we're not enamored. Like it's what we're trained to do, right? So I kind of giggle because it's almost like you went in your civilian world and you're back in your military world, like the only girls again. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. Did you ever do you do you feel a difference being the only girls or one of the fewer girls in the military? Does it any different than being one of the fewer girls in the civilian?
I actually know, one thing I can honestly say is, I mean, I had a great career, being in the military, of course, we all have our deployments and trainings and all
Right.
that. As far as being a truck driver, I had a lot of male drivers, experienced drivers, sergeant first classes, staff sergeants that kind of took me under their wing because again, I like to know things. And so I would always be the one that would ask the questions or, try to figure something out on my own before I had to ask for help. But I had so much guidance. And it's the same way with, when I came to Schneider, they gave me so much guidance. My training engineer gave me so much information, knowing that we were that we were military drivers that are now trying to drive on the civilian side. So he was like, okay, the difference is this, and this, and that. You got to
Right.
stop at the scale stations. You can't just run through this and everything. So on both sides, it is different because, in a military convoy, we got a convoy number and we just go.
Right.
We don't get stopped. We don't go into the scale houses or anything like that. So I did have to learn that I had to go through these weigh stations or inspections and stuff if I got stopped. Um, but at the same time, like I said, the training engineer we had, when we came to Schneider gave us all that information. He knew that he had to pinpoint a lot of things to make sure we understood that we can't do the same thing we did in a military truck. So it took a little while, but honestly, it really wasn't that bad. Just again, because we drove Freightliners in the military, so to get into another Freightliner, just not a green one, um, it took us a couple months, probably almost a year, to completely get the difference.
The
But it
nuances. Yeah.
yeah, but it really wasn't as bad. I mean, there are definitely a lot more regulations and stuff that we have to follow, with DOT and everything. But again, that's where my drivers leaders and, my dispatchers and everything and just other drivers would always tell me because I would ask. Again, I even still ask to this day, even though I may already know the answer, but I just want to make sure I'm doing right. So, to still be able to have that knowledge and that support to know that I'm doing the right thing on the civilian side, it's made it easy to transition into the civilian side of it.
Well, I think Schneider's really lucky too, because one, you asked a lot of questions. Two, your leadership made a conscious understanding like they're military and there are some differences and they're aware of that or had awareness of that and were willing to go like, hey, we gotta catch that, so
Yeah.
now you've got veterans that are now trained and I'm sure you're working with other veterans and so
Mhm.
it's kind of do they make like is there like a specific program Schneider has for veterans because of that or is it just they're cognizant of the differences?
Yeah, no, there's no special program per se for that. They do have the apprenticeship program, but It's really about the details. They get to know you.
Yeah.
And when they do that, especially being military, and I was really lucky because my first two DTLs when I started at Schneider were both ex-military. So they kind of understood and was able to kind of give me information to transition in as well. And so they knew when I was starting to ask questions that I just wasn't trying to be like a pest or a problem. They knew
Right.
that, with that military mentality, this is why I'm asking. And like, I told them, look, I like the structure, so I want to know what my structure is. And they help guide it. That's one thing with Schneider is they do try to get to know their drivers, because not every driver is the same. Not every driver is going to need the same attention when it comes to their driving skills, or what type of load you give them and everything. So again, that was another thing that I was very lucky at, because I've had great DTLs throughout my career with Schneider, and they all know that I'm military, and so they kind of expect that mentality sometimes.
I think you bring up a really important point when you said that you're like, I needed to know, I like the structure, I ask a lot of questions. And in some realms, like Schneider's a good fit for that because they better have structure and they better know how this all goes, because you're not going to have successful trucks on the road if you don't have all that. So it's a good match that way. But in other realms, asking a lot of questions, trying to understand why and all that, it doesn't match sometimes. And
Right.
people are like lost. They're just like, but I'm just trying to understand. And people are like, why you ask so many questions? Why do you need to know everything? Why do you this? And I didn't even realize that that was such a thing until somebody had told me a very specific story. And the very short version is he was asked by the leadership in this company to make the widget process better and come in under budget because they were over budget and stuff. And so he's doing what's asked, and he's got the board up, and we're all taught in some level of Lean Sigma Six, Green Belt, all that stuff, right? And the people that worked for him um, were not veterans. I think there might have been one or two. They were not. And they ended up going to the HR and said, this person's too much. We can't do this. And the HR went and put him on administrative leave. Kid you not. Like, and he didn't end up coming back. And I was blown out of the water by this. And I was like, that's a thing, because he was so excited. And they were like, yes, and we had a mission, right? We got a mission, right? So in some worlds, it doesn't work. And it's nice to hear these stories of these companies that are acknowledging, like, I got a military person. They're going to want to know. We know they like structure. We need to have structure. So that's a good fit. And they exploit the good, right? They exploit the good out of you, and they take all that and go, yes, let's maximize this. And now they have had somebody that's been there 9 years. And then, which actually leads us into kind of the other program that Schneider has. So you said they had an apprentice program, right? And that apprenticeship is specific to what? For the driving itself, or?
Yeah, so with the apprenticeship program, so when you're in the military, you get the Montgomery GI Bill, the post 9/11 for
Mhm.
education.
Right.
And so what Schneider does is in order to help you continue education through them, they have this apprenticeship program, which there is a veteran that runs the program. He works for Schneider, but he's a veteran, so he also works with the VA. And
Nice.
they help you get into this program to continue your education, using what benefit you have left over from the military instead,
Very
because
nice.
some people don't realize that even though you may retire out or get discharged out of the military, that you still have those benefits up for the next 10 years,
Yeah.
and they don't realize they can still use those benefits. And so that's what the apprenticeship program is to help you with continuing that education using the benefits from the military while you're working on your civilian job.
How awesome is that?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, maximize it, right? Let's maximize what you got right there. So you have the apprenticeship. That's super awesome. But the other thing that's good, like you mentioned Freightline a couple times. So for the audience, and correct me anywhere I'm wrong on this, Patrice, but
Okay.
Freightline is the company that actually is building these semi trucks, right? And then the semis are bought by these companies such as Schneider, Old Dominion, all these big trunking companies. And the story, do you know the story? I'm going to let you tell the story of Freightliner because I think it's important that you guys are saying this. So Patrice is going to tell us exactly how this all came to be and what it is that she got selected for and is still doing. So go ahead, Patrice, start with the Freightliner side.
Yes, ma'am. So Freightliner out of Cleveland, North Carolina, they have a, a a factory down there where they actually create the trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a gentleman down there. I'm not quite sure if he still works for the company or not. That back in 2002, he was trying to think of a way to say thank you to all the veterans that work for him. He had quite a few veterans that work for him. And he wanted to think of a way to say thank you for their service. And then it dawned on him, well, we create trucks, so let's create a veterans truck. And so back in 2002, they created the first truck, which was called Eagle One. And he started a program called the Ride of Pride program. And so these trucks that are created for this program are all military themed. No two trucks are the same, and only veterans can drive the trucks. And so every year since 2002, they create different military themed trucks, and they award these trucks to veterans and to companies like Schneider, Old Dominion, and all that. Mm-hmm. Companies that have veterans program. One of the requirements is you have to have veterans programs and you have to have a veteran to drive this truck. And every May they award these trucks. They usually make anywhere from 2 to 3 trucks, and they award them to the company, but the company has to pick the veteran. And the good thing for Schneider is they actually have like a whole thing that we go through. It's kind of like makes you feel like you're going through a promotion board. You know, you got to sit up straight and, talk to them through Zoom calls or, interviews and everything like that. But it's a great way because you want, not saying that we're the best of the best, but you want someone that's going to represent you and the veterans of your company. So Schneider has a whole process that we go through, and there are so many veterans within Schneider that apply for this. They actually usually start it like around this month, and it takes them till May to select the driver. That's how long it takes, because they have to do this the elimination process through it all, and but they're very detailed about it. They know where they want to take the program, so they look for the best veteran to suit that. But the Ride of Pride program, right now we are actually down to 9 trucks that are still active throughout the program throughout the United States. Schneider has been awarded 12 trucks throughout the years, and every truck has a different driver, and Schneider is so supportive of this. They actually let us go out and do a lot of different events with this program. I've done Race Across America. I've done motorcycle rides with the National Veterans Awareness Organizations. I've done different events with Wounded Warrior. I've done different events with Red Barn. And Schneider has been so supportive of that over the years that, I can honestly say that the time that I've had my truck, I've done 62 events. And if you think about it, that's a lot, because we only do events usually from like March to December. And, in the midst of this, we're still hauling freight, but Schneider still always makes a way for us to be able to support our veteran communities and the companies that call in and say, hey, can we get your Ride of Pride truck? And, so it's been great, with the support that I've gotten, and the program itself is just amazing, because it stands, they explain to you, they want you to support the veteran community with these trucks. And, and that's how it started. And I mean, it's been a great ride. And then when I got put in my truck, Fidelity, it was really super excited. And I'm so glad that, Schneider gave me the opportunity, because I am the first and only female Ride of Pride driver. And right now I still am the only female. So, that's kind of, another step up for women. And, I try to get my other female veterans to apply for the truck, come on and, help me out here, not that the guys are, any problems, because they've helped me a lot throughout the years, some of the former Ride of Pride drivers, and they've been great. They helped me get prepared for it, because you really can't be prepared for something like this. To walk out and see somebody hugging your truck, or somebody standing next to your truck crying, and you're not quite sure what's going on. It took me a while to realize that people were attracted to my truck because they see the soldiers on my truck. And so many people have said, that looks like my uncle, or that's the uniform I wore. And, and I can't lie, there's times I had been, a few minutes late for on time delivery because of standing there, letting a veteran vent and get some frustrations out that they may not have anybody else to vent to. But because of being a fellow soldier, they feel like they have that opportunity. And, as a fellow veteran, that has anxieties and stuff like that, it's always good to have somebody to talk to. So I will stand there and let them vent, and then just hope that my DTO doesn't fuss at me for being late or something. But Schneider has been great about everything. And like I said, they've been so supportive throughout the years that I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. This, because I continue to work and be around my veterans, which is a great thing for me. And, to know that just those conversations, making those contacts and everything, it helps other veterans. And that's something that I've always wanted to do, is to continue my service somehow. And with the Ride of Pride, that's what I get to do.
How long do you get to have it sounds like you've had your truck a while then, because I thought for some reason in my head I thought you get it for a year and they rotate. That does not 62 events. You can't do that in a year. So like,
Yeah, no, ma'am. So and just with any company, they have a rotation on the life of the truck, pretty much.
okay.
So once the truck is created or the truck is made, usually within like 5 years, most companies try to rotate their trucks out. So it's the same thing with the Ride of Pride trucks. So after the life of the truck is up, which my truck is 6 years old come May, it'll be time for her to get retired. That's why we had a little bit of confusion as far as me coming for the event and everything. So, and what they do is once they retire these trucks, they actually take the wraps off. So there will be no other veteran driver for these trucks. And that's one good thing that I like. So somebody can't come purchase this truck, jump in it, and it still have the military wrap and stuff on it. Schneider actually takes off the wraps so that, again, the way we say it is so that nobody can disrespect the truck. So they take the wraps off of them, but usually about 5 to 6 years is what they run. Some companies choose to keep them longer. I believe it too. It may just be on how the truck runs. I mean, if it starts having problems and stuff like that, which is usually around that 5-6 year time frame, then they'll rotate the truck out. But right now my big girl's still hanging tough, so we're still here.
Well, you alluded to the event, so that's where where I get all excited. So I love telling stories. So the story time, right? So when I do our podcast, I always believe in a pre-meet. I get to know them. We get to figure out what angle we're going to be. It relaxes the person that is going to come on the podcast. It just makes conversation easier, right? So I'm a huge fan of that. So Patrice and I met, and we're talking away, and she's telling me about the Ride of Pride, and I'm learning about Schneider and what they're doing, and we're just having great conversation. And then we're winding down, and literally the last thing Patrice says to me is, well, Miss Donna, if you ever have an event, let me know. And she probably saw my eyeballs go light right up, and I went, but I do. And so that is kind of the next thing that we're doing that I'm super excited about. Schneider has agreed to let it was one truck, but we kind of sweet talked and begged, and it kind of worked out. I don't think my begging did anything, but it was the way it worked out that they're going to give us 2 trucks, because what I begged for was Patrice to come down. I'm like, it would be full circle. Like, I interviewed her, and then she comes to the event. And so Coming Home Well, who is our big nonprofit, right, does all the podcasts, is expanding, is pulling in an outreach portion, which I run, Transitioning Warrior. And we have partnered up with part of the Gary Sinise Foundation it's called Brothers After War documentary. And we are doing this at a local theater that has a really big parking lot. And I asked if we could bring the Ride of Pride trucks down. And I said, can we bring Patrice and her truck down? And as she had mentioned, they were going back and forth if they were getting ready to retirement. So that was going on behind the scenes, which I didn't have an awareness of. And they said, you can have a truck and you can have the one that's in the local area. I was like, thank you. I appreciate it. If Patrice becomes available, it would really be cool. Well, again, in the background, all this stuff's going on, and it worked itself out that Patrice will be with us too. So if you are in the greater San Antonio area and want to come to the event, it's on the 21st of March. It is on I-35 North at the Santikos in Cibolo, and it will be running from noon to 4. The hour prior to that is where Patrice and who is the other driver? I just blanked out on his name.
Mr. Jeff
Jeff,
Wagner.
that's right.
Yep, he has a Rider Pride truck that's called Eagle.
That's right. And he has Eagle. So Jeff will be there with Eagle. Patrice will be there with Fidelis, right? That's correct.
Fidelity. Yep.
Fidelity. There we go. And you guys get to come down the hour before around 11, probably like 10:45, 11. And you get to go check out the truck. You get to hang with Patrice and Jeff. You get to take pictures. You get to do all that stuff before going into the event. And then Jeff and Patrice will both be at our event. They're listening to the seminar. So it's full circle. I'm super excited. I'm extremely thankful for Schneider for coming to the table and saying, yes, we'll do that. And not one, but two, which I feel like a spoiled brat right now that I get that. And as you can see here, I'm all excited. Like it doesn't take much to get me going. So I'm like, I love it when all the worlds come together. It just kind of really solidifies what we do, and the importance of working together. And so Schneider having you and the Ride of Pride, and for Freightliner for what they're doing, that gentleman saying, hey, over, half my people here are veterans, we're going to honor that. We can't thank them enough. That little thought led to all of this. And then, we get to have that. And then the impact you're making on people, it's kind of therapeutic, right? They just get a moment to kind of come apart a little bit, and you're there just to say, yeah, we got you. So it seems small in one sense, like, oh, we wrap a truck, but the impact is a huge ripple effect. So
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome what Schneider's doing, what you're doing as an ambassador, the apprentice program that's utilizing our resources. They get a really very skilled person. Just military themselves is much more disciplined by itself, and they got a whole bunch out of you because you were already a truck driver. Like, my gosh, I mean, that was like score. How awesome is that? So you're super nice. You're so smiley, but you still get a couple extra checks in the badass world on the badass girl side, because you do, and you're doing it with a smile, which just puts a couple more checks up there. So I love every bit of this. Is there anything, like, any thoughts that you have on this? What are your thoughts? Are you excited to come down?
I am super excited, Miss Donna. I really am. Anytime I can support anything military is so super exciting to me. And then to know that I'm going to be around other veterans, soldiers, their families, it's so exciting, to me. And it's good for me. It helps heal my soul. And in the midst of it all, I hope that, by me being there and talking to fellow soldiers and, the Gold Star, Blue Star, Silver Star families, any of it, I hope that I can bring a little bit of, happiness, joy, peace, or whatever it is that they may need at the moment, and that's what makes it work for me. That's what makes it so worthwhile for me, is to know that I can still relate to the veterans and their families, and, maybe make a lot of friends. I tell you what, I have so many friends that I think my phone book is going to start locking up on me, but it's but it's great, to know that, not only if I just need to vent about something, that they know that if they need to vent, they can give me a call. And for me, some soldiers just don't realize they have that support out there. So to be able to support them, knowing that I got the support of my company, of Schneider, it just makes it so much easier. And so it's so rewarding. It really is. I don't even know how else to put it, and then Reese Across America. Oh my God, that event, even if I don't have my truck in December, I think I'm going to go drive one of the Raptor vehicles. To the last 4 years being around the Gold Star families and, fellow veterans and veterans that are truckers, it has been so amazing, and again, these are opportunities that Schneider has given me, and I couldn't be more grateful.
I think what I like the best when I have companies reach out to me, especially big companies, to show what they're doing, because a lot of times, you say big company and you're like, oh, they're just trying to make money and they're just trying to do this and and some are. I have zero doubt that there are companies that are just trying to, the bottom line is the dollar and that's the end of the story. And in some senses, it has to be kind of true because if there's no money there, you can't keep a company running. But there is nothing better that I like than a company going, hey, we're actually put thought into this and we've come together, because that's two big companies, right? It's Freightliner, that's Schneider, and
Yep.
we're doing this. And yes, does it promote them? You bet your butt. Schneider
Yep.
came because it's like, hey, we want to show this off. Absolutely. But what it's doing for the people
Yep.
is it, as the same that we had in the military, right? Force multiplier, right? Tip of the spear, name all the, your lot, right? All
Yep.
those silly things that we said. But there is truth in that, right? That that when we come together like that, there is a sweet spot in the middle where everybody wins somewhere. And this is one of those situations. And I am
Yes,
like
ma'am.
the eternal idealistic person. Any place I go into, there I'm always the one that's like, we can find the win, we can find the middle of that. And I think Schneider did that. And it's really cool. So I love every bit of it. All right. Well, when this comes out, it's supposed to come out just before the event. The event again is on March 21st. So by the time this comes out, it'll be 3 days from the event. And we want to make sure that we get everybody out there seeing this truck, meeting Patrice, meeting Jeff, getting pictures, and coming to the event. All of it's important. And I think this is just awesome. So we will wind this down unless there's anything else. Any last words that you're thinking of?
No, ma'am. I just want to say, God bless everybody. I hope everybody's staying safe and warm and out of the crazy weather that we're having. But I, again, I'm just so grateful and honored to be able to do this and be a part of something bigger than myself. So that, yeah, I don't
Perfect.
even know how else to put it, Miss Donna.
I think you said it perfectly. So, all right. So, from all of us here, just things to think about is like when communities come together, amazing things happen. And it happens on big scales, it happens on small scales. Making an impact doesn't have to be as big as what Freightliner and Schneider are doing. It can be just as simple as when you make that connection. And Patrice gets the opportunity to make that one on one connection all the time and reaching out saying, you're going to be okay, that's an impact. So don't ever forget that your actions actually have an impact and it all makes that ripple effect. So from all of us here, Beyond the Front Line and our parent podcast, Coming Home Well, we are super grateful for all of you. And if you like this, please like, share, go to wherever you listen to this, write a review. Believe it or not, it helps us. It's not really to put a feather in my cap because I'm still going to do this the next week. I still do it for free. But what it does do, it lets this push out to other people because somebody's going to need to hear this. Somebody's going to want to come to the event, or somebody's going to want to take the opportunity and maybe use that apprentice program that Schneider's offering. Or maybe one of them is listening at Schneider and one of those little badass girls says, all right, I'm going to go apply for the Ride of Pride. And we have another girl up there riding the
Yes,
trucks for the Ride of Pride. Right, Patrice?
yes, ma'am.
That's right. So, all right, from all of us here to all of you, we hope you have an awesome, awesome week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Front Line, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.